Martin Scorsese was in the news recently, even before this movie came out, because he said that the Marvel Cinematic Universe was ruining the theatrical experience. Apparently, Martin Scorsese's idea of the cinematic experience is being bored and unengaged for 3.5 hours. You sure showed him, Marty. You sure showed him. Hey everybody, happy Thanksgiving. Welcome to So Awkward. It's me, Don. So I recently binge watched Netflix's newest series, The Irishman. I was able to get through it in an afternoon, morning to afternoon. I mean, it took me maybe 6 hours altogether. I had to take a couple breaks. I took a break for breakfast, took a break for lunch, a couple pee breaks, snacks here and there, but I made it through the whole thing, the entire series, and it was okay. It was pretty good. I'm joking, of course. It's a movie. Martin Scorsese's newest movie. It wasn't necessarily straight to Netflix. It was a theatrical release in limited theaters. It did come here. I could have seen it in the theater. If you love movies, Minneapolis is a great movie city. We have lots of really artsy-fartsy theaters. They get artsy-fartsy movies that come out in limited runs. But it's 3.5 hours, and I just, I'm a 42-year-old man. I don't see how I could have, it just didn't look that compelling that I needed to see in the theater. And I'm glad that I watched it on Netflix, because it literally did probably take me close to 6 hours. There are moments of brilliance, but for the most part, a lot of people are calling it a masterpiece. Like, the critics are going insane over it. I would call it lesser Scorsese. It's not up there with Taxi Driver or King of Comedy, Goodfellas. It's not at the bottom. It's not one of his worst movies, and he has made a couple movies. It's one of his, like, oh, that was a fine movie, like Shutter Island. I don't ever need to see Shutter Island again. Waking the Dead or whatever that one was called. Fine movie. Cape Fear. Now, Cape Fear might be at the bottom, but I'd rather rewatch Cape Fear than this one. This is one of those movies like Departed, which I saw it. It's a fine movie. I've tried rewatching it, and it's just awful. Every time, I can't sit through it. I love Martin Scorsese. Some of his movies are among my all-time favorites. Taxi Driver, I could watch. I own Goodfellas on DVD, Blu-ray, and I have the digital version on Amazon. Just because everywhere I go, I have Goodfellas in my pocket. And it's just nice to be able to do anything I want anywhere I go in the world, and I can watch Goodfellas.
No more shines, Billy. What? I said no more shines. Maybe you didn't hear about it. You've been away a long time. They didn't go up there and tell you. I don't shine shoes anymore.
Relax, will you? For crying out, what's getting to you? I'm breaking your balls a little bit, that's all. I'm only kidding with you.
Sometimes you don't sound like you're kidding. You know, there's a lot of people around.
I'm only kidding with you. We're having a party. I just came home. I haven't seen you in a long time, and I'm breaking your balls.
He said some disparaging things about the Marvel Cinematic Universe that pissed off a lot of nerds. I'm a nerd. I didn't get pissed off. I don't really care what other people think of things, for the most part, unless it's like racism or sexism. Anyway, the guy who directed Hugo has no place putting down the Marvel movies. I would rather watch Iron Man 3 than Hugo. But I would rather watch Goodfellas or Casino or even After Hours or even Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore than a lot of Marvel movies. I think they both have their place. I'm not going to really... I'm mostly joking. So this movie is about Jimmy Hoffa, kind of. Jimmy Hoffa's in there. Possibly the man who claimed that he killed Jimmy Hoffa. I don't know how much of this is true, if any of it. On the face of it, it seems like a perfect movie for Scorsese because it's long and drawn out, and there's lots of gangsters in it, and there's murder. I think, but to me, the script, it felt like it should have been vintage Oliver Stone. Like, this should have been Oliver Stone could have taken this movie and made it so much more interesting and engaging and crazy. Because I think this movie needed to be crazy. Because they just like Jimmy Hoffa just kind of shows up and he does some stuff and then the movie's over. That's a Cliff Note version. Like, there's a scene where the Irishman, Robert De Niro's character, goes, you're gonna meet a guy, and you're gonna get a truck, and you're gonna drive it here, then you're gonna go, then you're gonna meet a guy who's gonna give you keys to a car, and you're gonna. So the guy he's meeting is Howard Hunt. He just shows up. So he's involved, I guess, with the Teamsters and the gangsters, and it turns out the truck was full of guns for the Bay of Pigs invasion, and then later, Robert De Niro was like, it's that guy that I met. That just struck me as there was so much more that they hinted at, like the Bay of Pigs and Howard Hunt and Watergate was mentioned and the Kennedy assassination and all the peripheral stuff was so much more interesting than the actual story we were shown. And it just felt like, where's Oliver Stone when you need him? Where's Martin Scorsese when you need him? Because I'm not going to spoil anything necessarily. I don't think. I thought it was a fine movie that I'll never rewatch because it was mostly boring and unengaging. The reason why Goodfellas is a great movie and an engaging movie, other than the murder and the swearing and the busting my balls and Joe Pesci beating people up, is that Henry Hill is a likable, interesting, sympathetic, relatable protagonist. This movie doesn't have that. I think when Scorsese started to go off the rails was 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when he started making movies that felt like Oscar bait, but he really stopped making movies with central protagonists that anybody could ever care about. I don't care about. Howard Hughes is kind of interesting, but if you want to make a movie with a likable character, you don't cast Leonardo DiCaprio. It's just my opinion. Even like Taxi Driver, just Travis Bickle was interesting, and he was crazy and violent and creepy, and he took women to porno movies, and he didn't know how to relate to society, but at his heart he was a kind person, and he just wanted to help people. Like, he didn't want to bang Jodie Foster, he wanted to save her from a life of being a sex slave. Rupert Pupkin everybody could relate to Rupert Pupkin and wanted him to succeed and just felt so bad for him. That's why King of Comedy is a vastly superior film than the Joker, but I thought the Joker sucked. There's my Joker review for anybody who wanted it. I don't who am I supposed to care about in this movie? The only character with any that you could possibly have any affection for or just even think wasn't boring and unengaging was Jimmy Hoffa. This movie's worth watching for Al Pacino as Jimmy Hoffa and Joe Pesci as whoever Joe Pesci played. They're both fantastic. They're both acting. De Niro phoned it in. De Niro has been phoning in for I don't know how long. I thought this was the movie that would it's not just bringing Scorsese back, but I thought it was going to bring De Niro back. And it didn't. A lot of it is the weird CG on his face, making him look younger, but it's not really making him look younger because he still looks... He spends the entire movie looking like he's 60, and then in the end he looks like he's 100. And he just spends the whole movie... It's like they just had like a picture of De Niro that they printed out and they put on De Niro's face. You know where he's doing the De Niro face? A little bit. I killed Jimmy Hoffa a little bit. He was just kind of there. It was one of the worst De Niro performances, in fact. He's better. I'd rather watch Stanley and Iris. He was better as the guy in like a coma in The Awakening. He was bad. Like he was bad. It wasn't even that he wasn't good. He was bad. It was a bad acting performance. Shockingly bad. Because he's a great actor. Why would you spend money to use CG to de-age somebody when you could just have bad makeup that would still look bad, but it would look better than bad CG? I don't get it. And there's a scene where he beats the crap out of this guy, and it's the worst thing because he's still an old man. I don't care what you do to your face. Like he walks, like and he was like throwing punches, and he was like kicking, and it was like laughably bad. It was like a scene from Grumpy Old Men where like Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon were fighting. Just if you liked Gangs of New York, if you thought that was the pinnacle of Scorsese's career, you'll probably like this one. If you loved The Departed, just to me, this seemed like a parody or an imitation of Martin Scorsese. It just seemed like somebody really liked Goodfellas, really liked The Departed, and just wanted to like rip it off. Unfortunately, it was Martin Scorsese. I mean, check it out if you're a Scorsese fan, because there's a lot to like. But if you're not a Scorsese fan and this is not a good introduction, and this will not win you over. There's no reason this was 3.5 hours. Like they could have cut an hour. Just every scene is like, Tony wants to have a meeting with you. Tony wants to have a meeting with me? Yeah, he wants to have a meeting. A meeting with me? Yeah, Tony. Tony wants to have a meeting. Wait, you're telling me Tony wants to have a meeting with me? Yeah, Tony and Paulie, they want to have a meeting. Well, Paulie's going to be there? Yeah, Paulie's going to be there at the meeting. Yeah, Paulie and Tony are going to be at the meeting. Paulie and Tony are going to be at the meeting with me. Yeah, Paulie and Tony, they want to meet with you about the thing. They want to meet with me about the thing. Yeah, they want to meet with you, and about the other thing. Well, you're telling me Tony and Paulie want to meet with me about the thing? Yeah, on Tuesday, they want to meet with you about the thing. Well, you're telling me Tony and Paulie want to meet with me about the thing on a Tuesday? Yeah, next Tuesday, Tony and Paulie, they want to meet with you. Let me get this straight. So you're telling me, and it's just, and I understand, like every great auteur, their films speak a certain language, like Robert Altman films don't sound like Quentin Tarantino's films. And I love the diction and the way Scorsese tells a story. But this one just felt like a parody of Martin Scorsese. I don't know, check it out. It's a perfectly fine, harmless movie. But I guess I'm saying I would have liked it better if Oliver Stone directed it and if somebody else. I think De Niro just didn't do it for me. But check it out if you're an Al Pacino or a Joe Pesci fan, because they were really good. Also, that guy from Breaking Bad and that one season of Fargo, the guy with the big head who looks like Matt Damon. He looks like an ugly, fat Matt Damon. Great actor. Clemens? He shows up, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be great. I love this guy. And he does nothing. He was wasted. He should have been the Irishman. Cast that guy. Cast somebody young, and then in the old scene, make him look old. Do it the reverse. Just a thought.